Um, my name is Liz Valladares. I am with the Hudson River Foundation, and I am also with the Urban Waters Federal Partnership, in particular, the Lower Passaic River location located in New Jersey. Um, Thanks for making it to our call. I'm going to start sharing my screen so you can go ahead and see my slides. But in the meantime, please, if you can continue introducing yourselves if you haven't already, I encourage you all to do so. So there we go. So you are joining us today because you were interested in our mitigating displacement session being held by the Urban Water Starting Network, and in particular our anti-displacement and anti-gentrification group, which is a group of partners that really have been meeting over the last couple of years to explore topics very much like this one. And so we've been hosting a lot of these conversations online as well as offline. If you are a participant of River Rally, we also presented at the latest conference in May in San Antonio on a topic very similar to this. So welcome all to this call. Continue to be up, in the loop about future calls that we hope to put together, in the future. And with that being said, I'm just going to again, just ask you all to introduce yourself in the chat if you haven't already. Encourage you to use the chat box as well if you have any questions, especially as our presenters get started. Please feel free to drop those questions and we'll address them when the time comes. And another thing that April's going to be doing is she's going to be dropping in the link for the evaluation form. We'd love to know all and any feedback that you have for us. So we would just love it if you could just have that link open. So when we do close down this call, it is easily available for you to find, and you can give us your thoughts on, how helpful something like this was, or if you'd like to see something like this in the future as well. So with those reminders out of the way, just a really brief introduction to the Urban Water Sorting Network if you're not too familiar. But we are a peer-to-peer network of people and organizations working to conserve, restore, and revitalize America's urban waterways, supporting our members' work through tools, training, mentoring, and financial assistance. If you haven't checked out the Urban Water Sorting Network site, and maybe I can ask April and Maria to drop that in as well, I encourage you all to do so. It is a hub of a lot of different resources. It's definitely one of the first places I look whenever I need a particular resource, a particular tool, or when I'm just like wondering if anybody else has done, what I'm looking to do or explore in my community. So definitely encourage you all to check that out. I mentioned we have three wonderful presenters for you today. That includes Adrienne Rice. She is the founder and executive director of Sustainable Georgia Futures, who will be our first presenter. We also have Gloria McNair, who is the chief community officer with Groundwork Jacksonville. And then we also have Caroline Alveola, who is the director of operations with Lahaina Community Land Trust. So really exciting presentations and really just wonderful work that they are doing in their communities. So we're very excited that they have the opportunity to share that with you all. And before, diving into those presentations, I'm actually going to go ahead and ask April to maybe go ahead and share the poll. We just like to get a sense of, who's joining us in the room and what have your experiences with, this topic of mitigating displacement due to climate change. We really want to know what those impacts have been in your community, if you've noticed them, if you've gotten the chance to maybe address them in some way, or if you really are just, maybe that's one of the reasons why you joined us here today, because you want to be able to find ways to be able to mitigate some of those impacts. So we'll give you all a minute to go ahead and complete that poll.
Liz, are you able to see the results in real time?
Yes, I'm seeing that the most popular answer so far is we're experiencing challenges in my community, but I'm not sure what to do about it. So I think you definitely came to the right place. Okay, so I think we have a good group of answers So yeah, if you want to go ahead and share that. Oh yeah, we can see it real time. So um I can see answers are still coming in, but I think it's safe to say that definitely the representation in the group is that, it's mostly people looking for resources. They have experience, they're looking at those challenges right now. They're seeing them happen, but they're not too sure what to do about it. Some folks are just here to familiarize themselves with the topic, and we definitely have a couple of folks who are experienced with dealing with those impacts and are able to share examples. So if for those two folks in the room, if you want to share any like specific links or resources, we'd love to share. This is a learning group here. So we would value any additional information you can share with us in addition to what our speakers are sharing today. So with that being said, I am going to go ahead and introduce Adrian. Adrian, I'm pulling up your slides for you, and hopefully you can see that okay. And whenever you're ready, please take it away.
Okay. This keeps popping up, the little thing there. That's perfect. Okay, so as Liz said, my name is Adrienne Rice, and I'm with Sustainable Georgia Futures. And what Sustainable Georgia Futures is, we are a Black women-led environmental climate justice organization. And what we do is we create pathways to the clean energy economy for BIPOC communities, but specifically Black communities in Georgia. And we really address two of our nation's issues, which we feel like is climate change and systemic racism. And so we really try to address systems that deal with white supremacy, which is one of the reasons why we do this climate gentrification walk. I'm not starting from the very beginning. You guys are just going to get like a small view of what we do. A little bit about myself. I grew up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and Atlanta, Georgia. I was raised by two aunts, so I used to travel back and forth. And so Atlanta, Georgia is one of the places that I feel like just really raised me and reared me, had a career in organizing with labor unions and community organizations. I've worked in over 40 something states. So, but I always felt like, Atlanta was the place that grounded me. And whenever I came, especially for a young Black woman going out in the world, this place really fortified me. And so coming back home and deciding that I'm going to stop working in all these other places, I'm going to come back home and I'm going to work in my hometown, this place that I love so much, I began to notice that I did not even recognize it. I didn't recognize streets that I had grew up on and I had been down when I was a child, right? I really was very upset with the changes that I saw that was made, not because it was in progress, it was because it I could see where they were excluding the people that made Atlanta and made Georgia like what it is, right? And so we can't, and then we have a lot of people who are transplants who have come into Georgia and they've moved here and they just think, Atlanta is so great and they really don't know the history of the place in which they're in. Like, yes, of course, they go to Martin Luther King, his scenario and everything like that. But we really do this because we really want folks to know the transformation that has happened. So, with that being said, I'm going to start with a quote from, I saw some people on here from Louisiana, from Colette Pichon Battle. And she just made the statement that is so true about climate change. Everybody will be affected by climate impact. Environmental climate justice addresses who will be able to recover, repair, and rebuild. And we feel like climate gentrification, it really speaks to what she's saying here about recover, repair, and rebuild. And so with that being said, that grounding, if we could go to the next slide. Okay, so what is climate change, right? So it's been a couple of years since we started this walk. So some folks are familiar with climate change. If you're familiar with climate change, climate gentrification, if this is your first time hearing it, drop it in the chat, or, if this is the first time you're hearing about it, let us know. So, climate gentrification was an emerging concept describing how land with greater resiliency against intensifying physical impacts on climate change became more desirable and valuable, thus more expensive. And what it does is catalyzes fast and visible social economic transformation in communities, forcing many to relocate from generational homes as climate migrants. So we're going to talk about when I say climate migrants, what do I mean by climate migrants? So, climate migrants, and this is the next slide, climate migrants are people who are forced to leave their homes after temporary or permanently due to climate change impacts like rising sea levels, extreme weather, and things of that nature. And what the studies used to show that climate migrants would move, and they would move from, say, like, a town or zip code over, up, away from, the disaster that is happening. What we're finding now that is happening is that you have climate migrants that are moving all across the country, and they're trying to move to higher ground, safer ground, cheaper ground, right? So we're seeing that influx happening a lot here in Georgia, right? Because we have a lot of people coming in from California. We have a lot of folks coming in from Florida now. And so we see those differences, and a lot of them, it's because of climate change and the things that are happening in their area, and they're trying to move to different places. Next slide, please. So this study was done, and it was actually, I can't think of her name right now. We've partnered with this group. She came up with the language. Her name was Valencia Gonder. I don't know if any of y'all know her, but she actually came up with the definition of climate gentrification. And after she did that, Harvard did a study, and they looked at 3 pathways into climate gentrification. So we're talking about the superior investment pathway. And this is a situation where high income households opt for safer locations. So I'm going to talk about that. We're going to give an example of that. And then you have the cost burden pathway. It is assumption that only richer segments of the population can afford to live in climate vulnerable areas. And then you have the resiliency investment pathway. And this is an engineering, and y'all probably have heard of the word greenification, and this has to do with infrastructure and investment that drives up property value and exclude those who cannot afford to live there, like people who are native to the place or legacy residents, if you will. And so they can no longer live in these areas. So, think of that. All right. So we're looking at the 3 pathways. So we're going to go to Miami, which is in Little Hades. I used to organize in Miami quite a bit. I knew this area. I used to hang out in this area in the early 2000s. And it was populated primarily by Black Americans and Haitians, right? A high Haitian population that was here. And then along the coast, along the area, you had, white, and you had Hispanics that lived there. They also lived in Little Havana as well, too. But this is more inward, right? This is more inland. And so what we're finding right now, what's happening in Little Haiti, is that people who are moving from the coastline, because coastline is receding, they're now moving into this area that was an undesirable, I'm putting in quotation marks, area at one time. And now you see a transformation that is happening in the folks that lived there, that was Black people that were living that during that time. They are being kicked out and displaced in these areas. And this pathway is a way in which we see that happening. We're not going to really dig deep into that one. We're going to go to the next one. I just want to give you all the definitions and the examples. So Calabasas, California, that's a very expensive part of California. I don't know if we got anybody, some folks from California here, but y'all know Calabasas, that's a very expensive place. And we had some incomes, medium incomes that was like, when we did this like 4 or 5 years ago, it was like 157. I'm pretty sure that the average wage and salary is way above that now. And this is cost burden pathway. So remember, as I said, the fires that are going on, these are folks who can rebuild, right? They can afford to rebuild. But we know of situations where in California that folks were not able to rebuild, right? After fires and things of that nature that has happened. So this is really a cost burden pathway. And everybody, as Colette Pichon Battle said, they cannot recover and rebuild in those ways. So really don't want to stay in Calabasas because we're going to really get into the last part. So the Atlanta Beltline. So this is resiliency investment pathway. And remember, we talked about this as greenification. I'm going to read from the script now because I really want to make sure that I get this right. Because honestly, this Beltline, which I know so many people who come here and they just love it so much, is one of the reasons why we started this walk. And so, as you can remember, the resilience investment pathway is the engineering and infrastructure of investment that drives up property value and excludes those who cannot afford it. So the Atlanta Beltline, for those who don't know, is one of the largest. It is set to be the largest right now, most wide-ranging urban redevelopment program within the United States. It transformed a historic 22-mile loop of abandoned railway corridors into connected networks of multi-use trails. We're going to see a map in a minute. And it connects with public park, future public transit, linking 45 in-town neighborhoods. So critics say that this green gentrification has provided long-term displacement of Black residents, right? And is something, and face stalled light rail. There's supposed to be a light rail. Transportation is another infrastructure that was set forth, and was one of those systems that really keep people and hold people back and leave folks behind. So they argue that this green gentrification has misplaced so many people. So community critics argue that the project's governance was led by developers and downtown elites. These are some Black elites as well, too. If you don't know about Atlanta, it was known as being the Black Mecca. So during this time, we had a Black mayor who came up with the master plan that also they partnered with another young man from Georgia Tech. And if you know about Georgia Tech, it's really, while it's close to some Black communities, it is an elite technical school that is here in Georgia. So this guy who is from Atlanta, well, he's from Chamblee, a part of Atlanta in a suburb, came up with this really, for lack of better words, kumbaya type of ideal about how we can just bring everybody together. But what happens is when you are building upon white supremacy, right? And structures that are in place, it never goes down the way that we think it's going to go down, right? So, and what the community critics are basically saying, that this group failed to secure affordable housing or prioritize the needs of frontline communities that was there. Won't really get into the delayed transit, but it's some things that I really want you to know about the state of Georgia. A lot of people don't know that our state minimum wage is the same state minimum wage as Wyoming. Wyoming has a state minimum wage of $5.15. We have a state minimum wage of $5.15. I know y'all say, well, $7.25, which that's not a lot more with federal government, but our state minimum wage is $5.15, and it is a reason for that when we think about the economy and labor and work, and it is connected directly to slavery. So lastly, some believe that this was a political move. And so far as in certain areas in Atlanta, so where you see this belt line and where we do our walk is in Old Fourth Ward. Old Fourth Ward is down the street from a place called Sweet Auburn, where it is down the street from Martin Luther King's family home, Ebenezer Baptist Church, all of that, right? And so in this area, there used to be over 94% Black people that lived in this area. You guys, when we're on the walk, we ask people to guess how many Black people still live in this area. And we get like 50, we get like 60, we get like all types of numbers. But the number that stands right now is 33%. And that number is quickly declining. So what does this do? Like, why do we say that this is so political? Well, we did birth some of the first Black millionaires here in Atlanta. However, the bulk of the people are people like my people, working class, poor people, working every single day. And so the power that you see with the people that are here, it's never came from our finances. It's come from our culture. It's come from our politics. And so with the eating away of this, you're eating away of a Black working class political system that is here that is really making a change in the neighborhood. So I don't know how much time I got. I can't really see because I'm looking at my script. How much time do I have, Liz? I don't want to go over.
Yeah, let's do 2 minutes. So
Two more minutes. Okay, so let's go to this next slide. So with this next slide, when we talk about systems, right? We're talking, I know in our lexicon, redlining has come up, right? This is a 1930 something map, right? We're not going to get into the nitty gritty of it because we don't have time for that. But when we're talking about system, we're talking about this red line system. We know that the red area was the undesirable area. And so, the green was go. And if you look at this map right now, and if you could go to the next map, and you see the gentrification that is happening, what you will see is that gentrification is really happening, and it's like a red, it's a blue, it's a light blue. It's in many of those red-lined areas, they are ripe for gentrification. So that redlining that happened in the 1930s and the transportation bill that came through, it is still impacting communities to this day. And it's really making the decisions of who has and who doesn't have, right? So last slide, I think. So Pond City Market was really, they love to say that they are the flagship of the Beltline. And this is the rhetoric that people speak when they talk about the development of this, of the Beltline. They said that it was built on integrity. And when you talk to many communities that are throughout Atlanta, Black communities primarily, that integrity part is questionable. So with that being said, that's the end of it. We do have a walking version of this where we really break down the Old Fourth Ward and what it was and the politics of it. And if you're ever in Atlanta and we're doing the walk, you're welcome to come.
Thank you so much for that, Adrienne. And just because we want to make sure that all of our speakers get the chance to share their presentation, I'm going to go ahead and move on to Gloria, who's up next. But if you have any questions for Adrienne, please drop them on the chat. We'll still have a few minutes to take any questions for all of our speakers. But yeah, and there's obviously always contact information that I'm sure Adrienne can share with you if you have any burning questions about all of the wonderful work that Sustainable Georgia Futures is doing. So with that being said, Gloria, you're up next.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gloria McNair, and I'm the Chief Community Officer with Groundwork Jacksonville, an affiliate of Groundwork USA. Our big project in Jacksonville is building the Emerald Trail. Next slide, please. And so this is a map of the Emerald Trail. There's going to eventually be 30 miles of urban trail. That means it's connecting some of our neighborhoods that were adversely affected by redlining, that was adversely affected by follow-on zoning practices that excluded certain communities. We're connecting 14 of these neighborhoods, some of them that were divided by I-95, I-10, and this trail will help reconnect some of those neighborhoods. 16 schools, 2 colleges, 21 parks. Jacksonville has a great number of parks, and 2 creeks, Hogan's Creek and McCoy's Creek. McCoy's Creek, you see at the bottom there of the map where you see Mixontown and Lackawanna. That is McCoy's Creek flowing through those 2 neighborhoods. And this trail design that you see here was done with the Path Foundation, and it was done with a steering committee of some of our community leaders. We had neighborhood representatives on the steering committee. We would meet one evening with the steering committee, and then the next evening we would meet with the neighborhood group that would digest what we had talked about and say whether they approved or disapproved. So it was done with community. And next slide, please. And I always like to talk about how the community is by and for our partners in all of this. And I think I would like to say that we learned a great deal from what happened with the Beltline. I'm glad that preceded this discussion because we didn't want to replicate that, and we wanted to start with the community in mind at the very beginning. When we talked about developing workforce for the neighborhood, here in the top photo, you see someone who's learning how to be a water monitor in the neighborhood, because before we could do the trail, we had to do the creek restorations. Our very first project was actually a creek restoration, and I'm talking fast, which I'm not accustomed to doing with this southern tongue of mine. Originally from South Carolina, now living in Florida. I'm trying, y'all. So we started with McCoy's Creek. Oh, thank you. And you see, we're wearing T-shirts there with Crest. That's an initiative, and I should say a project now, that we started back in 2019 when we did community engagement, and residents said that they wanted to do more mentoring with their seniors and with their youth. And so we started a multi-intergenerational group called CREST, Community Restoration Environmental Stewardship Training. So, mouthful there. So we were doing all of this engagement, and we hear from residents that, oh, it's very fine and dandy that you're restoring the creek that floods, that endangers our residents, that puts us at risk with just the tiniest bit of rain. We can't even access our homes, but we're afraid that once this trail is coming through our neighborhood, we won't be able to afford to live here. So we decided to assist the residents in coming up with a 10-year equitable development plan, something that would be executable and something that we would help them, that we would do this side by side with them. And so that's how we got to our home repair program, which I'd like to focus on this afternoon. With the home repair program, it was when we did the equitable development plan, there were 4 topics that came to the top that they were most concerned about. One was environmental stewardship, which, groundwork. We went, yay! That's what we wanted to hear. And but we were addressing that with the CREST program. They were also concerned about preserving their history and culture, and they were concerned about, guess what? Being able to afford to live there, to have affordable housing. And I will show the video about the home repair program.
Okay. I'm just going to play it for a second, just to make sure that you can all confirm that you can hear the audio. Can you hear that? No, you weren't able to. Okay, let me just try this again.
No, I can't hear it.
Try this again.
My grandparents.
Can you hear them? Perfect. Okay, so let's go and hit play.
I enjoy my home. My grandparents was here in 1954. I want to keep it going. God is so good, and it came just in time.
Let's talk about North Riverside. This is the first neighborhood that we've worked extensively with because of the McCoy's Creek restoration. Groundwork Jacksonville is a nonprofit, an environmental nonprofit, working with the city of Jacksonville to build the Emerald Trail. The residents were a little bit nervous. Having a beautiful amenity in the neighborhood would actually push them out. They were concerned about displacement. Am I going to be able to stay in my neighborhood where I've grown up, my parents grew up, my grandparents? So we started listening to that because we want this trail to be for all of Jacksonville, and especially those people who live near the trail. We decided, and that means the neighborhood decided, let's see what we can do regarding housing. We're like, maybe a home repair program. That's a good start.
I love this type of program. I love helping people. The name of my company is Adrian Hayes Inc., and we have the project here at Oregon Street, and we're doing the roof over here at this house. When we first came here, it was like a lot of, it's an older house, so it has a lot of deterioration as far as for the roof. I don't think the roof has ever been done. So we saw like roof leaks and stuff like that. So we're taking off the shingles right now, take it down to the bare wood so we can see what's all underneath that.
Our houses are old, and our houses, some of the houses need air conditioning, need new roofing. So it's really, really, really good for us, for the community.
At this particular house, we're going to do a new cool roof system. We're going to do put a new AC in this house. We're going to do subfloors in the bathroom, new vanity, new toilet in the hallway, new subfloors. Just worrying about health and safety issues first. We want to address those things first, like the ramps, the walk-in showers, the subfloor that's kind of cracked, just electrical, plumbing, just the safety things that for these people, and they're very appreciative.
At the end of the day, it makes me feel really, really good for someone to call and say, Miss Shirley, I thank North Riverside, I thank Groundwork, I thank them for what they did for us for the housing. And it makes me feel real good for someone to say, my house don't leak anymore. I don't have to worry about putting a pan down anymore. I don't have to worry about this. It makes us feel real good in the afternoon.
I like the fact that it's focusing and it's geared towards the community. It's helping so many people in the area. I will say with Groundworks, I have noticed that the people with this program has been the most thankful people that I have dealt with in the 17 years that I've been doing business.
North Riverside is one of the poorest neighborhoods in Duval County, and that seldom gets acknowledged. We have some wonderful, wonderful partners at United Way. When they heard about what we were trying to do, they matched the funding, and that's another $600,000 that we gained for this home repair program. Our goal is to do 46 homes. We've done 25, so we're very happy about that. We had to establish some eligibility criteria. The person must live in the home, they must reside there, they must have clear title to the property, and all the taxes need to be paid up, and so that's very important. And there's a point system, so if a person is a veteran, they receive extra points for that. A senior citizen, if there's a child under 18 living in the home, there are also points for that. And if there's a disability, there's also points allocated for that. So there's a point system, and that's how we determine who qualifies and meets that criteria.
It's wonderful. I didn't have the funds to have the roof done and the work done on my house. So when this grant came available into our neighborhood, I was happy. And also I was happy to be a part of one of the homes to be repaired. I wanted to thank especially Mrs. Thomas for helping me to get this done. It was wonderful, and I kept on her, when I'm gonna be next, when I'm gonna be next. So thank you, thank you, thank you. That's all I can say, thank you.
Thank you, Liz. I still find that video is still very touching to me. At that point, we had completed, I think we said 23. Well, we've completed 50 home repairs now, and that does include HVACs. It includes re-roofing. It includes, oh gosh, retrofitting the bathrooms. Our seniors who were having difficulty climbing into those tubs, now they have walk-in showers with grab bars. And so I cannot tell you how rewarding that work is. And so where are we now? We're not done, because you may be thinking, wow, they said 14 neighborhoods. That's only one. We've gathered together with partners with United Way of Northeast Florida, with the LISC, Jacksonville, and we've started, it was the United Way's brainstorm, and they let us all share in this fundraising project. More Than Four Walls is our new home repair program. And we have now received funding to move to our next neighborhood, Robinson's Addition, where Groundwork Jacks will be the financial responsible person paying. We pay the bills. And also in our neighborhood of Newtown, where we're working with Wealth Watchers there, but though there are two neighboring communities to this one. And I have this photo here because this was back in 2019 when we first started talking to the residents about the restoration of McCoy's Creek. This is a road, by the way, that would flood this badly. And this was not a hurricane season. This was not some torrential downpour. This was normal rainfall. You can see the street sign there. That's Nixon and McCoy's Creek Boulevard. We had to remove that street to make way for the actual creek and to alleviate the flooding. So please show the next photo. I want you to see what that creek looks like today. This is 2026, and that's McCoy's Creek. To the right, you can see some of the cul-de-sacs. That's a new bridge that's gone in that accesses that from one side of the neighborhood to the other, that they can walk across safely and be able to admire the creek. And that's downtown Jacksonville that you see behind, and right there. And that's a view that they did not have before. So I'm just loving working for Groundwork and making positive change in people's lives. And I'll cut it there because we have another speaker. Thank you all for listening.
Thanks so much, Gloria. I don't know if you can see, since I'm sharing screen, but there's lots of emotions and reactions and clapping happening for
yes.
a lot of members. So
thank you all.
So again, reminder to drop any questions you have for Gloria. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce Carolyn next. Carolyn, whenever you are ready, happy to move through your slides as well.
Thank you so much. And what two awesome presentations, really tough acts to follow. So excited, Gloria, for your successes there in your community. And Adrienne, you're doing such a great job in raising awareness. Gives me a lot of hope. And hope is something that we've been working hard to cultivate here in Lahaina. Aloha, my name is Carolyn Alveloa. I'm the Director of Operations for the Lahaina Community Land Trust. I'm also one of the co-founders. I'm here today to talk to you about one of our programs. 15 minutes is not a lot of time for all the things that we're doing, but one of the things that we are really proud of and are working hard to share is our Keep Lahaina Home program. And we're grateful for the invitation to share with this group because we think it's a really exciting way of mitigating this type of disaster displacement pressures. But after that last presentation, I think there might even be some good seeds sown here today for ways that it could even help with the green gentrification that some of our other groups are speaking from. So next slide, please. So the 2023 Lahaina wildfire really put Lahaina in the spotlight. And for good reason. I mean, it's a horrible disaster. We lost over 900 units of housing, pretty much all of it workforce housing, in addition to our entire commercial area. But when it comes to gentrification pressure, that is not a new story for Lahaina. We have for decades been experiencing this really tragic widening of home ownership affordability gap. With the exception of the subprime mortgage crisis, the gap has consistently grown over the last 20 years. And it has become, just because of Maui's global desirability, people love Maui. It's a beautiful place. People want a piece of it. And it has been forcing our people out of this place for at least the last 2 decades. I'm a product of that. I was pushed out of this area because it was just way too expensive to live. This graph that we put together helps to demonstrate the difference between the median sell price of a home and what someone earning 100% of the area median income can afford. Now, I updated this graph for 2025, where the median price of a home was about $1.3 million. And that's well beyond what someone owning 100% of AMI can afford. The thing that this graph doesn't do well is show just how much of our community is actually living on much less than 100% of AMI. So the housing crisis that this type of inequity is contributing to is really even more extreme than this graph shows. Next slide, please. The disaster just compounded an existing problem that we were already having. We were having this intense gentrification pressure. We have pressure from climate change because our shorelines are rising, and it's all of the things, the pathways that Adrian discussed and the kind of challenges that Gloria is talking about, they're so familiar here. We're just seeing them in our own flavor. But with the disaster stacked on top of it, it just heightened our concern and our, if I'm really honest, more of a panic, because we also know some of us in our community have lived through disasters in other places. And we know that oftentimes, it's actually very well studied and proven that disasters actually contribute to widening wealth gaps even more. So this great study that was done in 2018 actually documented how in post-disaster communities, unfortunately, the aid that comes in is often distributed inequitably, and the white homeowner, college-educated portions of the community generally see their wealth increase, whereas people of color, renters, and those that have less levels of education are more likely to lose jobs, more likely to be displaced, and more likely to pay higher rents. This awful disaster capitalism beast shows up and just exacerbates problems that are already a struggle. And unfortunately, the well-intended recovery funds often contribute to that, way beyond what the natural disaster created. Next slide, please. It's really, the researchers can't exactly pinpoint why, but where more FEMA aid is exacerbating inequality, but it is a clearly demonstrated pattern that after these large disaster events, the FEMA aid is not equitably distributed across communities. In our community here, we found that, it's so much chaos after a disaster, and people are so traumatized, and people deal with that trauma in different ways. And sometimes it's the cultural differences that sometimes I think contribute to folks having different levels of access. In addition to, we also can't deny that there's a certain degree of systemic racism that is still prevalent in some of these systems that God help us to finally root out, so we can just treat everybody equitably. But it's a very, very well demonstrated thing, and it was something that we really wanted to do what we could to make sure it didn't happen in our community. Next slide, please. This cautionary tales from other places, and I think I saw in the intros that there is someone here from New Orleans, but Hurricane Katrina is probably one of the most studied and well-documented cases of intense gentrification that followed Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. These are just some of the headlines that have been documenting the changes that those communities have been undergoing in the couple of decades since that awful disaster. Next slide, please. And the fact is, $70 billion is estimated to have flowed to New Orleans from federal sources in the post-disaster environment. And even with all of that money that was intended to help and to help people stay, in the case study of New Orleans, it's still been found that 20 years later, they've lost 100,000 Black community members. Many of their neighborhoods were more likely to gentrify. There's a horrific record of 566 recorded eviction filings that were then turned into short-term rentals. And it's also it was also acknowledged as recently as 2023 that there are close to 7,000 legal and illegal short-term rentals in New Orleans. The reality is, in these post-disaster communities, this aid flows in, you get a bright, beautiful, shiny new community, and the pressures for real estate investors is extreme. And sometimes the disaster that a family has gone through have left them in such economic shambles that they don't feel like that there's another way, that there's no way for them to stay, and that sometimes they have to sell, and they end up leaving. And that's what we didn't want to see happen here in Lahaina. Next slide, please. And so since the fires, billions of dollars have also flowed into Lahaina from federal sources, from philanthropic sources, but we refuse to accept the narrative that displacement is a cost of recovery. And our Keep Lahaina Home program is just one way that we are challenging that and ensuring that we can have more than short-term recovery, but that our short-term recovery efforts can actually benefit our community in the long term for generations to come. Next slide, please. And so that brings me to our Keep Lahaina Home program. It was originally, we started talking about it as an insurance gap program. It was actually inspired by a developer who had just finished building a low-income apartment building that burned in the fire. And he was short insurance money to rebuild it. He didn't have enough insurance money to rebuild it. So he asked the county, hey, can you guys help me come up with the extra that I'm going to need to fully afford the rebuild? And someone in our community said, hey, if you're going to provide that kind of help to a developer, what about us? What about the homeowners that are in Lahaina that also don't have enough insurance that we can't afford to rebuild? So that's what inspired this. And I'm so grateful to Maui County for trusting us and allowing us to pilot this idea, where we developed an insurance gap program to do exactly that, fill the gap between what a family's insurance proceeds are and what their actual cost to rebuild would be. And we wanted to see these people come home, be made whole, replace what they lost, and we wanted to protect that investment, especially when it was public money, so that it didn't just have a single individual benefit for one individual or home or family, but we wanted to ensure that we were protecting that investment in ways that were going to protect our community from these gentrification pressures that we already know are coming. And so these funds that we've raised are designated exclusively to assisting homeowners to restore and replace a primary owner-occupied residence that was lost in the fire. Next slide, please. This is a lot of the fine print that I'm going to kind of go through quickly, just so I can get to like the main point. But basically, some people have huge gaps, some people have not so huge gaps. So if our investment, if the resources we're bringing to the table are less than $100,000, basically we ask the family to agree to a deed restriction that will enforce the requirement that the home remains a primary owner-occupied unit of housing. It's not to be used as a second home. It's not to be used as a financial instrument. And the homeowner agrees to be occupant of their home. And if at any time they're not going to occupy their home anymore, that rather than turning into a short-term rental or any other things, that they would resell it, and that same owner occupancy requirement is going to be permanent and is going to go with the land, so that it always remains a unit of housing for our community. Next slide, please. In addition, if the gap and majority of the gaps fall into this category, where the gap is greater than $100,000, then the deed restriction asks for a little bit more of a commitment to community. And so in addition to the owner occupancy requirement, they also agree to a managed depreciation model, which I'm going to get into a little bit more in the next few slides. But basically, it removes the speculative opportunity from that land and preserves it, kind of in the way a conservation easement does for conservation or agricultural lands. But this is an easement that preserves it as affordable home ownership opportunity. And then the third requirement that we, or the third thing that we ask them to commit to is that in the event they ever choose to sell their home, the land trust gets the first opportunity to purchase the home so that we can put it into our portfolio of community land trusts, affordable home ownership opportunities, or we work with the family to, if we're not able to purchase the home, we work with the seller to identify another interested community member that could purchase the home at the appreciated value. So a lot of real estate lingo here, but if we go on to the next slide, I have a great example that I hope will help people see what this can do. But in a nutshell, what homeowners that are considering this program just need to know is that if their grant is going to be over $100,000, they're agreeing to a fixed appreciation rate of 1.5% on the value of their home in perpetuity. We have calculated this appreciation rate based intentionally to slightly underpace wage growth. Based on an analysis that we did, our wages are only growing at 2 to 3% per year. We have purposely set it to be a little bit for that, so that if anything, as time goes by, these homes only become more affordable and not the opposite. Again, the home must be owner occupied. The land trust gets the first option to purchase if it ever comes onto the market. And we have a weighted lottery system that we use in our land trust homes and for other homeownership opportunities that we make available, that gives preference to the community of Lahaina that has been displaced over the last several decades. So we give preference to longtime Lahaina residents. Next slide, please. And so what this looks like in the numbers for a family that might be considering this, if it's very typical that a lot of our families that work in the service industries only have an annual income of about $40,000 a year. Their pre-fire mortgage, somewhere in the range of $1,200. This is actually based on a real life example. And their pre-fire home value was around $678,000. When they got their quotes for their rebuild, it was going to cost another $600,000 to rebuild the home that they lost, that they're still paying a mortgage on. They only had $345,000 in insurance proceeds, and so their gap was to the tune of $270,000. They had to make the choice of either figuring out how to take out another mortgage for an additional $270,000, or build a smaller house, or sell their place and move on and leave, and probably leave Lahaina, because even if they sold their home at their pre-fire value, the median price of a house on Maui is 1.3 million. It's unlikely they would be able to buy something else here. So after we come in with the insurance gap funding, the families are usually they're like, yeah, we can agree to all of that. That's what we want anyway. We want to stay, we want to live in our house, and we want to be able to afford it. So we fill that gap for them. They continue with their pre-fire mortgage payment because many of them have favorable mortgage terms, and they get the benefit of permanent affordability for themselves and for our community. So I'm going to dig into that a little bit more on the next slide. What this looks like in how this managed appreciation plays out is for this family in this example, what we do is upon completion of the rebuild, we calculate their base value, and we want to make it clear, we're not trying to devalue anybody's property. We protect any pre-fire equity that they had, and we do that, and we also add on to their pre-fire home value a 10% appreciation for increase in value of their property. And then what we do is we just basically remove any subsidy that was provided for them to go back home. And so their starting resale value in this one example would start out at $476,000. They're still paying off their original purchase. We're not we can't go back and undo all of the economic mess from before, but we're trying to draw a line in the sand to create affordability today. And so we take their pre-fire home value, add on some appreciation, reduce our subsidy, calculate a resale value. That's where it's going to start. And now for every year that goes by, it's going to appreciate at 1.5% per year. If this family, let's say in 15 years, decides to sell, that math would calculate out, they'll resell that house for $583,000. Even today, if there was a house that was being sold for $583,000, everybody would be in a panic trying to beat each other to being the first ones to be able to buy that. There's no homes on the market for that price, let alone something that's brand new and rebuilt after the fire. But for that family that's maybe choosing to move on for whatever reason, they'll be able to pay off their mortgage, pay their closing costs, And my slide got cut off, but they get to walk away with about $455,000 in equity. It's not like they walk away with nothing. They're not giving up their home. They still have an opportunity to grow I hate to use these words, grow some wealth. But what's more important is they were able to come home. They were able to remain in a home that they could afford. Their housing is now stable, and this house is going to be sold affordable to next family forever. The deed restriction is permanent and it goes with the land. Next slide, please. So we get pushback on this because there's some misconceptions out there that people think, oh, nobody wants to live in a deed restricted home. Well, in high value communities like ours facing this gentrification pressure, I'll tell you right now, it quickly becomes something that people can accept when the other options are to leave. And when there is no home ownership opportunities because the market is out of reach, deed restricted home does not look that unappealing. In an example of Aspen, where the median home price in 2024 was 13.5 million, 70% of the full-time occupied housing units there are deed restricted. And I'll tell you, people are not complaining. The affordable housing program in Aspen actually has to serve people with up to 240% of AMI, incomes of over $300,000, because the living is so unaffordable that the deed restricted homes are the only option. Next slide, please. I know I'm running out of time and I'm so sorry, but I just want to bring this last point home is that, being able to build wealth, it's not always measured in dollars. And especially in our community, in our culture, the wealth that comes from a term that we use that we describe as vai is much more related to quality of life. It's a place that people can live and thrive. Even the regular working class, our teachers, our nurses, our public servants, even doctors can afford to stay and live in their hometown, where parents can get by with just 2 jobs, not 4. And they have time to spend with their family, with their kids, with their parents, taking care of the older generation and being sure to malama and care for the next slide, please. And also, as I just pointed out in my example, it doesn't mean that you don't get to grow any value in your home. You do, but it's controlled and it's managed. And one of the biggest things that the deed restriction, if it's unattractive to anybody, it's unattractive to people that are looking for real estate as an investment. And that's kind of exactly the effect that we want. We don't want people coming and buying homes in Lahaina as an investment anymore. We need our homes. We are on an island. We need our homes to be homes for our community, not wealth growing vehicles for people from the outside or for people that are transplanting and moving here. And so that's why we built this program. You can just jump to the next 2 slides and go to the last one, where I just want to say that, disasters don't have to mean displacement. We don't have to accept green gentrification, and we can develop solutions that both protect our families and create long-term community stability. And this is how we're doing it in our little part of the world. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry for going over.
Carolyn, for that. Thank you to all of our speakers today. We are at time, so I hate to do this, but I think you ladies all see all of the wonderful claps and reactions for all of your wonderful presentations, which talk about all the important work that you do. I don't know, April, do we have, if folks want to stick around for maybe just 1 or 2 minutes to maybe get some questions from the chat, or could we maybe just put these questions in a Google Doc or something that maybe Carolyn, Adrian, and Gloria might be able to sift through later?
I have a couple minutes if anyone has any burning questions, but or I'm happy to respond later.
I do as well. So
I can hang out for a couple of minutes, yes.
Okay, great. And let's see. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab some of the questions that are jumping out at me. Let's see. From a former, I'm assuming this is going to be for you, Adrian, from a former Atlanta transplant who has walked that belt line. Oh, maybe it was more of a comment, sorry. But hey, I'll just read it out anyway. From a former Atlanta transplant who has walked that belt line and been to Ponce City Market, thank you for your presentation and work to bring awareness to these issues. So that more of a comment, not so much of a question. That was my bad. Let's see here. Gloria, I think this is for you. How does Groundwork Jacksonville housing repair program prevent future climate gentrification? Won't the repairs drive up the property value so that the next owner will most likely be people of higher socioeconomic class?
Well, that was happening before we started, but all of these residents were getting these offers for their property. They were getting cash offers because they felt hopeless about what they were going to do. They couldn't do the repairs. So we've been a great benefit to them for climate gentrification. Did you not see that flooded McCoy's Creek that would, even during a hurricane, it would flood the neighborhood, flood people's homes, people's lives were even threatened. Now with that creek restoration, the creek was also contaminated, by the way, with ash deposits from poultry factories, industrial waste that is also protective against the climate. We're also putting in trees for some of those home repairs. We actually added trees to the neighborhood, and we will do that throughout the trail development, adding foliage that will help with that heat island effect that we experience oftentimes in Jacksonville. And I hope that answered the question. I want to leave room for other people.
Thank you. Thank you. And then I did see something
One more
about,
thing I would like to
yeah.
add. We do have a few things that help people in Jacksonville, and they are, oh gosh, senior exemptions, homestead exemptions. You can get up to a $50,000 exemption on your property that keeps your property taxes from increasing by more than 3% per year, and that's a great benefit. Also, there's exemptions for people who are veterans. And so there's several exemptions that are available in the city of Jacksonville to keep property taxes manageable.
Thanks so much for that, Gloria. And this is to all of our speakers, and I think it's a wonderful question to end with. Great to hear about the work that each of you are doing. What can others do to proactively prevent displacement? So maybe let's see who wants to go first. Maybe why don't we go to Carolyn, then Adrian, and then Gloria again.
To proactively prevent displacement, I think it's kind of what Gloria is getting at, is we got to be able to help our people stay in the wake of the challenges that are coming. And I think every community's challenges are going to be a little bit different. But for us here in Lahaina, they were very much economic challenges. So things like property tax incentives are one good way. Things that I love your home repair program. We have something similar. Habitat for Humanity out here does something similar for especially senior citizens that can't afford to repair their homes so that they can have more of an opportunity to stay. For us, the displacement pressure is coming now in the form of all of our real estate getting bought up and taken up. We have so much people that have bought second homes on Maui. We have so much people that have bought up properties to make into rentals. And that is what we are directly combating. So in our community, that's the biggest pressure that's contributing to displacement. So that's where we are applying ourselves to try to provide a counter pressure and provide this inventory of housing that is protected from that real estate investment pressure. So I think it just depends on the forces that are creating displacement, but understanding those and then countering is probably your best bet.
Thanks, Carolyn.
Indeed. And, we also have done energy retrofits and things of that nature with weatherized ATL with the city of Atlanta. So I think, helping, roof repairs and things of that nature. So we've also done that work. And I think that does make a huge difference in keeping people in their homes. But a lot that has happened with Georgia is very much like New Orleans, like the cat is already out the bag right now in Atlanta, in a lot of these places. Like we do have neighborhoods that have high energy burdens, and they are looking what has happened with the Beltline and are trying to fight back. And I would just really agree. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm getting all types of calls right now. Carol, I would agree with what Carolyn stated, is that you have to keep people in their homes. And one of the ways that you do that is you have to be aware of what is happening in your neighborhood. You have to really try to educate the people around you that this is actually what's happening. And the other point that I would say is that none of this could happen. These developers cannot do what they do if they don't have the zoning that they have, and if they're not getting aided and helped by elected officials. So you need to understand what's going on, because what you will find, and this is so unfortunate, right? Because we had a mayor here, and she admitted she was a part of the process of gentrification, but she didn't know that that was what was going to happen, right? And so now we have all of these examples of what is happening. And I love Carolyn's slide on New Orleans, because that was just perfect. I organized in New Orleans. I remember them firing educators. It's so systemic what's happening. And we have to look at these communities, stop looking at these communities like this could never be me, and knowing that it could be you, because we all have a homeowner loan corporations map that was in our cities and in our places in the 1930s. And that divestment and things of that nature, it applies everywhere. So, stay informed and stay engaged with the political system, because if you are not at the table, you will be what is on the table. Okay?
Yeah, thank you so much. And then Gloria, do you want to just take a few seconds to also add?
Wait a minute, what was the question again?
Yeah, well, it was first a thank you to all of the wonderful work that you're all doing, but then what can others do to proactively prevent displacement?
Well, I have to chime in with Carolyn also about the renters. That is a great opportunity for opportunistic investors to take advantage of folks. And so what I have tried to bring more awareness to is the need for tenant rights. And that can be a protective factor. And even giving renters, if you've been renting this home for 10 years, giving them the first what's the term for it? The first right, the first opportunity, to buy the home. If the renter wants to sell the home from under them and make a profit because the trail is coming through there, give that person who's that longtime renter that first opportunity at purchasing that home. We have started a Jacksonville Community Land Trust, and hopefully that can be protective to several of our neighborhoods, putting those currently vacant or abandoned homes into a trust that can be later developed and sold at an affordable price to the residents. Those are some of the things that we're working on here.
Thank you
Yes.
so much. Okay, everyone. Well, thank you so much for sticking around for the additional minutes. Thank you again to all of our, great presenters today. We'll do our best to maybe follow up with everybody that registered and share any other additional information or answers to those questions. But thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your week. And please be on the lookout for that recording made available to you as well. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Right.